All right, so Tracey Hoover, Instructional Technology Coordinator from Clarksville-Montgomery County School System in Tennessee. So good to have you. And Nikki Lavigne. I want to say Lavigne. Did I say that right? Yeah, I got it right. Okay, so new teacher induction coordinator from Clarksville-Montgomery, and then Tina Smith, who's director of professional learning. This is 3 viewpoints. It's going to be an awesome conversation. I'm going to leave it up to you guys. I'm going to stop sharing if you want to share. But it's your turn. We want to hear from you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us. All right, so we are here with you this afternoon to share a little bit of information around some leadership and model shifts that have happened for us over the past year and a half. So again, my name is Tina Smith. I am the Director of Professional Learning for the Clarksville-Montgomery County School System. I have with me Tracey Hoover, our Instructional Technology Coordinator, and Nikki Lavigne, our New Teacher Induction Coordinator. We are all 3 from the same professional learning team, and our focus normally, our goal for our teachers is to support them as they educate and empower our students to reach their potential and to be able to graduate from our system, both college and career ready. But we really want to focus this afternoon and talk to you about the journey that we have been on for the past year and a half and what we're doing to try to transform the professional learning to meet the needs of our educators that are ever changing and evolving, given the circumstances that we've been facing in the past year and a half. So to give you a small picture of our district, we are a district of 42 schools. We service about 38,000 students, and we have around 5,000 employees within our district. We're a very focused district, guided and determined by our strategic work plan each year. So we want to start off by giving you a picture of what professional learning looked like for us in the 1920 school year. So just to give you a picture of our foundation. So you can see a very small snapshot of a piece of our strategic work from the 1920 school year. And our work in professional learning was focused on increasing individualized professional learning opportunities. So when we think about professional learning as a whole, then we were doing things like, one thing that we did to increase individualized opportunities was by offering choice, making sure that we had professional learning opportunities to meet all of the diverse learning needs across the district. So for example, we have a summer conference each year as one means for educators to start that learning. And in 1920, we happened to have 924 sessions that teachers could choose from to meet those diverse learning needs. Throughout the course of the 1920 school year, our educators took advantage of over 135,000 hours of learning that year. So that equates to around 50 hours per certified employee in our district. And our classified employees were also receiving professional learning, getting around 11 hours each there. We were already dabbling in online learning within the 1920 school year, but we were really one particular example would be a webinar series that we had during that school year. So we were recognizing the need to meet learners exactly where they were, and we were starting to provide some professional learning opportunities online, but it really for us tended to be short segments of learning to introduce new concepts. And if we really wanted to dig in deep, then we would follow that up with in-person learning. So that gives you a picture of some broad, just general professional learning knowledge. I will turn it over to Nikki and let her give you a little bit more detail around information specific to our new teachers at that time.
So painting a picture for new teacher induction specifically during the 1920 school year, we were roughly onboarding about 387 new teachers, or we did actually onboard 387 new teachers that year. Onboarding and district orientation, of course, took place in person. And then additionally, late hires in CMCSS attended late hire district orientation, and that typically occurred in larger groups throughout the school year. So typically a couple of days or even a few weeks after onboarding took place. Substitutes were provided for new hires to attend that full day of learning during that school day. And during the school years, new teachers received ongoing professional learning, typically that occurred in person with their building level mentor, that was focused on classroom management and explicit and instructional strategies. The induction team connected with mentors and new teachers primarily through school visits. So almost everything we did, all of our touch points were in person, other than, as Tina mentioned earlier, a few webinars that took place to touch base with our mentors throughout the year as well. But for the most part, all those touch points were in person. Year 2 during this time had fully been launched and was being implemented. And then year 3 was beginning to become, it was in the works. It had been brainstormed and a structure was in place, but it didn't get launched until the following 2021 school year. Our year 2 induction support did include online professional learning communities, where all of our year 2 induction participants were assigned a mentor, typically from another building in the district, in which the effective facilitation of PLCs was taking place. So as Tina mentioned earlier, our district was already dabbling in online learning. And so while we had that structure in place, we're still looking for ways to continually improve and strengthen the PLC to make sure that we're optimizing learning for our participants. And at this time, I'll hand it over to Tracey to talk a little bit more about instructional technology.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So the Instructional Technology Department in Clarksville-Montgomery County really consists of 12 technology integration coaches that support all of our schools, and that includes all of our administrators, all teachers, all district leaders, and employees in anything instructional technology related. But to give you just a snippet of what was going on at that time and kind of the focus that they had, they did lots of lead teacher trainings. So they were working with teachers on content building as well as blended learning. And they also, of those 900 sessions Tina mentioned at the summer conference, those 12 technology integration coaches did 132 district level sessions where they identified needs of our teachers. They planned for, designed, and implemented these trainings for our teachers to choose based on the needs that they felt they had. They did 100 plus faculty trainings. They did 600 plus collaborative planning sessions where they would work with teachers throughout the year as they collaborated together to design instruction. And then they did 600 modeled lessons. So if you think about that for a second, that's an opportunity for them to work with a teacher in the teacher's classroom with their students, with their devices, with their standards. So really heavy in individualizing at that point. And then most importantly to me, and close to my heart, is that they did over 2,000 individual instruction sessions. That's where a teacher would request that they sit down with them one-on-one and help them with whatever they needed help with, whether it was planning and designing a lesson, how to use a tool, any number of things. But it's that real on time, right now learning that teachers needed one-on-one. And it really just doesn't get any more personalized than that for my team. So we really believed that at that time we were serving our teachers well. We knew what professional learning looked like in this district, and we really truly had fidelity to the focus of individualized professional learning. We were constantly working at improving and then, of course, offering more of those opportunities. And there were things in place that we felt were the right choices. So at that time for our teachers, in person was the primary delivery method. Teachers wanted to see their teacher. We wanted to be with them. We felt like that was the best in most circumstances. We did that at set times, dates, and locations. Teachers knew in advance when things were going to happen. They could choose those, sign up for them, and be available. We tried to make all of our sessions highly interactive and engaging. We knew what best practice instruction looked like in the classroom, but we also felt like we knew what that looked like for professional learning, working with adults as well. And primarily our trainings were teacher selected. So we've hit on that a couple of times, but that was important, that teachers had an opportunity to choose professional learning based on content that they taught, their interests, and individual goals that they had set for themselves professionally. And I believe that we did that really, really well at that time.
So then once we were faced with preparing for the 2021 school year, of course, education was going to look very different at that time. And so we still had the same goal. Our teachers were still focused on the same outcome for our students, but our focus as a professional learning department really had to shift and help educators be safe and to really empower our teachers to be able to teach really well while moving fluidly between remote and traditional instruction. So we had about 40% of our students at that time that enrolled in our virtual school. So many teachers were going to be virtual teachers then for the first time, and we had to help prepare them for that new role and what that would look like and how to best meet the needs of their students. And then for the remaining 60% of our students, we had to help all of those educators be ready to teach their students no matter what that fluid transition looked like. And so professional learning needed to look very different for us in the 2021 school year. So to start off, we had to even figure out how to get teachers into our district. We tend to hire, we're a growing district. We are growing close to 1,200 students each school year. And so that means in turn, we're also hiring a lot of new educators every school year as well. And so one of the first things that we had to do was partner with our human resources department and figure out how to do a virtual job fair when we had always gone out in person to recruit new teachers to come to our district. And that is a piece that actually turned out to be very successful for us and something that we are continuing to use today. It also required us to go back and really re-examine the professional learning needs. We already had kind of this set map going on for our summer learning of what everybody needed walking into the summer. And then, wow, did those needs shift and change. So we quickly realized there was this new essential skill set that every teacher needed to develop. So we had to narrow that focus from what we originally thought. We had to eliminate so many sessions from our original plan for our summer conference. And we ended up with a prescribed learning path for teachers, which we had never done before. But since there was that essential skill set that everyone had in common, there now became this set of courses, depending on the grade level or subject you were in, that you would need to take to be prepared for that school year. So we then had to learn how to quickly transition what was an in-person conference to be a complete virtual conference. In regards to teaching presenters how to teach effectively virtually and to teach participants how to participate successfully in a virtual environment, which they had never really had to do before. One of the great things that ended up happening with the restructuring of our calendar for the 2021 school year was that our classified school-based employees were able to take advantage of the learning opportunities that normally occur at that summer conference right alongside the teachers so that they too were just as prepared to meet the new needs of the students as the school year began. And as a district, we had a strong focus on student social emotional needs, but we were quick to realize as a professional learning department that our employees had those same needs as well, and we needed to do something new to address and meet employee social emotional needs as well.
Adding on to Tina, you're going to hear me kind of echo some of the things that she just mentioned and make some connections back for our new teachers specifically. So in the midst of the pandemic, of course, onboarding and district orientation was on pause for some time. But once we began, of course, to hire new teachers, onboarding definitely had to be restructured. So instead of having this on-person onboarding, we had to completely restructure to make sure we were onboarding new hires remotely or using Zoom. Much like the other trainings that Tina mentioned taking place with professional learning, district orientation too had to be revamped to happen virtually on Zoom, as well as other trainings that occur in the summer with our induction mentors. So all of our induction mentors that we typically met with in person, and we had these engaging and interactive trainings that Tracey had mentioned earlier, we had to figure out how to be a model and continue to have those engaging and interactive trainings, but in a remote setting. So we were carefully working to model best practices for delivering effective professional learning in a remote setting. So what a learning curve, for us as the induction team. So during these changes, we were certainly also very limited on our school visits. So we were no longer able to visit schools as freely as we had been before, to check in with our mentors and see how they were doing, to see how our new teachers were doing, of course. So we had to figure out a different way to check in. And so establishing brief remote check-ins became a practice in which, again, we were utilizing and optimizing the usage of Zoom to ensure that we were continually offering support and encouragement during these challenging times. In year one, we had to find a way to provide late hires with immediate support to teach in a traditional or remote setting. So not only are you a new hire, it's year one, but you're coming in the midst of, okay, I have to teach both remotely and traditionally. And as Tina had mentioned previously, all of our other teachers had undergone this learning in August. So we definitely had to have those same individualized pathways for our late hires to ensure that they had specific training related to their content area, grade level, and role. So instead of pulling out a large group of late hires to attend late hire district orientation once a month, as that's quite a feat, especially when you consider the sub shortage that was also occurring, we had to figure out a different way to get late hires what they needed. So we began to facilitate weekly late hire orientation. So every time we onboarded on a Thursday, we'd follow up on a Friday with late hire orientation, getting those new hires exactly what they needed before they stepped in the classroom. We also had to work to restructure year three support. So as I mentioned earlier, year two and year one, of course, were underway in 1920, and then we were launching year three. And so year three, of course, was structured with all the face-to-face components. And so we were doing a new thing with year three, but then also having to figure out how can we rework this to make sure that it's possible to have year three supports taking place virtually. And of course, year two continued with online PLCs as the foundation. One thing we noticed across all 3 years of induction, year 1, 2, and 3, was really something Tina had just mentioned as well, was the need to balance patience and urgency. We knew that our teachers were feeling overwhelmed, like they were certainly feeling those challenges that they were being faced with. And so it was really important that induction support really focused on being making sure that we were encouraging, being supportive, and definitely being flexible. It became a focus of ours to ensure that that support was implemented by mentors and by us in a way that it was truly viewed as a support, that all professional learning that was taking place was relevant, meaningful, and valued, a valued time for the new hires, and not seen as an additional task to complete.
So there were a lot of changes for the technology integration folks as well. Things did not go according to the way we had always done them. So all of those classes that teachers generally chose had become mandatory. I think Tina called it a prescribed learning path, but that really meant that teachers were given a list of courses that they needed to take, and my team was given a list of courses that they needed to design and have ready for those teachers, and then also to deliver them. So not as many courses as far as different courses, but given to lots of teachers. And so some of the things they worked on were just an introduction to the platforms teachers needed to be familiar with in order to be successful as our district moved and purchased different things and moved in that direction. They also had to know things like how to use courses that we provided to them and how to create custom courses. And most importantly, we needed to support them and create courses that helped them understand best practices for instruction. Our teachers were high caliber, high quality with a real passion for teaching well, but they had never done that in a remote or digital setting consistently. And so they needed best practices and strategies for that, as well as how to differentiate and how to provide services in a virtual environment when that was necessary. And then ultimately something that was important, I think, across the nation, how to Zoom with students safely and effectively. So there was a lot of that going on. One thing we learned is that we needed to create professional, engaging, high quality online self-paced courses for those teachers that were not able to attend a live virtual Zoom training. And that wasn't just teachers that were doubly committed, but also things like late hires that Nikki talked about. As they came on board later and the sessions had already passed, they needed all of that information as well. And that we had a lot of staffing concerns and staffing changes that went on throughout that year. So if a teacher transitioned from one position or one content area to another, they needed to be able to get back to the learning that the other teachers around them had. So creating those self-paced courses was important. All of the other services that we provided had to move virtual. And then we spent a lot of time creating resources for teachers, because as overwhelmed as they were trying to manage all of the changes in instruction, they didn't have time to do a lot of the personalized creating that they would normally do. And then I think some of the presenters today mentioned lots of products were becoming available and people were putting a lot of resources out there, and we needed to curate that and really drill down for our teachers to give them access to high quality material and not have them spend time searching and stuff, shuffling through that. And finally, we did a lot of virtual open labs and kind of helpline support, so that teachers, where they would normally sit down face to face with someone, could reach out for 1 minute or 2 minutes to get a question answered or to get some support whenever they needed it. As they were teaching their students, if a problem came up, they could get somebody, get it corrected, get answer, and get back to teaching.
All right, so we want to share with you some lessons learned as we continue to move forward, because as much as people mention wanting to return to normal, professional learning is never going to look the same moving forward. So we will always, from this point forward, have a virtual school in our district, where prior to the pandemic, our virtual school offering was very limited, targeted to a very narrow audience of students. It is now a standalone K-12 virtual school that is educating quite a large population of our students, very similar to the sizes of our other schools in the district. So we're always going to have educators that need that learning to be prepared to be virtual teachers. So as far as professional learning is concerned, an overview for us moving forward, we are really learning to master the virtual learning environment and opportunities that are out there. Even preparing for the 21-22 school year, our summer conference remained a virtual conference. We are really learning how to have engagement and collaboration and accountability that is the same, if not better, than it can be in some of our in-person environments. We've really learned how to build that sense of community that you get when you're together in those online environments as well. So that learning is something that is not going to go away moving forward as well. We will always have those virtual learning opportunities and continue to learn and grow in those environments. It is going to be a blend of the old and the new moving forward. And as we continue to keep innovating for what those new models need to look like beyond today, we most definitely returned to choice as one way to help to individualize and meet the learning needs of the employees across the district. We're continuing to expand the audience of who has access to the learning and how they go about accessing the learning in the district. And we're continuing to expand the learning formats that they have access to as well to meet their learning needs.
The induction team also has learned several lessons during the 2021 school year that have helped to propel our induction program forward. So first, we're able to really leverage the new learning curve with technology integration, as an overall increase in comfortability among our educators has really occurred across the district to help streamline our induction processes, increasing efficiency, accountability, and engagement. I can see I left you hanging there on that slide. So that was meant to complete that. So the induction team has streamlined how we collect documentation from mentors to be more efficient. We are optimizing the use of hubs, as Tina had mentioned, like different ways, more ways to get learning out there, and Tracey will be able to make a connection to that as well. So we're optimizing the use of our hubs and our sites with the expansion of the CMCSS onboarding website, the induction site, and the induction mentor site. One could argue that possibly previously it would have been a great challenge for some of our mentors or many of our mentors to really be comfortable and using and navigating some of the technology features that we're using now, such as Google Forms, in which they're able to submit mentoring documentation. So we're seeing overall, because of what occurred last year, that our mentors are certainly more confident and definitely more comfortable with technology. In addition, we have greater accountability for learning as we've achieved the usage of self-paced courses, once more that Tracey mentioned previously that the TICS created. When we delivered professional learning to induction mentors this summer, we were able to record all of that learning that took place and then create makeup courses that can be accessed at later times and they're launched to ensure that all mentors are able to go back and watch that. So if they didn't get to see it, they get to see it now. And then also we have those courses as a resource on our site so that even if you were in attendance, you could always go back and reference a piece of that learning or go back and look at something later on. In addition, embedded in induction seminars, trainings, and our webinars is the intentional and thoughtful use of technology integration, in which we really have used various platforms to engage adult learners, more so than we ever have in the past. Next, we continue to expand learning formats, just like, of course, Tina mentioned earlier, in which we offer learning to new hires in person, as well as in the form of asynchronous learning with our self-paced courses. And so again, we certainly want our late hires to be able to go back and watch that learning and have access to that learning on the websites. And that's something we previously were not able or we didn't have as a process in place. We're utilizing online PLCs, webinars, and remote check-ins for asynchronous learning, continuing to be able to value the time of all involved, because we know that, of course, being able to stay in my building and Zooming or just Zooming during my planning if I have an issue is so much more efficient than having to travel from site to site. So we find that with our experience with remote check-ins last year, that's a great practice that we can continue this year. And we compare it with, of course, our school visits that we're able to conduct in person to touch base with our induction mentors and participants. So lastly, much like Tina mentioned before, we are also blending the best of the old and the new. Significant changes, of course, have occurred during the 2021 school year. And one of those changes was the usage of late hire orientation occurring every week. So we found that really was a best practice, and this shift has allowed us to facilitate more individualized and focused learning for new hires that really meet their needs. So we're able to meet with our new hires in onboarding, and then the following day for late hire orientation in such a small group. Sometimes it's just one-on-one or one-on-two, and so we're really able to dive deeply into the needs of those specific new hires, and then we can also maintain the continuity of instruction. So once a new hire begins in the building, they're not pulled away from their students to come out, of course, and have a sub assigned to attend professional learning. They're able to get that learning, that pertinent professional learning is delivered to our new hires before they ever step foot in the classroom, which is ideal.
Obviously, from the instructional technology perspective, we are keeping the online self-paced versions of all of our critical trainings because we realize how important it is for people to be able to access that throughout the year as new hires or as even if they took the class in the summer, need to reference it back. So we're making that part of our practice. We're doing library of support videos so that we're not reinventing the wheel all the time for little on-time things that people need. We can send them videos that have step-by-step instruction. They talked about hubs, which is really our word for an in-depth website, that one-stop shop for departments, curriculum, different content areas. And we really now provide those and help empower people to create and maintain those for every district and content area for every department content area in our district. And we recognize that we're going to have to keep those Zoom options available and give teachers choice. Not only do we want them to choose, have choice in what topics they cover that we're doing for professional learning, but we want them to have choice in how they receive that one-on-one instruction too. So if a teacher prefers to learn online or prefers to Zoom or prefers that they get how-to videos, then we absolutely wanted to meet them there with their desired way of learning as well.
Okay, so that's just a little bit of our story of how we are working to transform professional learning in our district to meet the changing needs of educators. Thank you all for your time this afternoon. Our contact information is on the screen if you would like to reach out or have any questions for us.
Well, you guys all made this seem like this really super heavy lift was easy. And it probably really, really wasn't. So, thank you. Like mad scrambles to build whole courses. Yeah, that sounds like I just built a course. Yeah. Yeah. No, not easy. So, yeah. So I'm super proud of you all. And I know you've been putting in a lot of extra hours and probably wanted to cry half the time, but thank you for all that you do. Because, it showed up for the kids, I'm sure. I'm really sure. So thank you for being with us today. Hopefully you hang on. We're going to show some video now and then move into our guest panelists who are also going to talk about their what lessons they learned in digital transition. But again, I'm really proud of you guys. And I want to say one other thing in this, really cool. You combine recruitment with teacher onboarding. I mean, I think that is just a lesson I got to make sure gets heard all across the nation. We will probably have, thousands of people view this video once we launch it to the full national audience, because, we almost never have a lot of live attendees anymore. They all watch it at midnight in their respective time zones later on. You know how that is, because they're just busy like you guys. So thank you. And you're all adorable. And, we're very grateful for your contribution. Thank you very much.
I want to tell you a story about a new teacher, Louise. Louise was very excited to get to work. She'd been at university for 4 years and just finished her student teaching at Ellington Elementary. She's looking forward to having her own classroom and watching students grow and learn. As she gets closer to graduating, there are lots of steps for her to get to that classroom, more than she thought. First, Louise needs a recommendation from one of her professors. The professor says it's no big deal, but first you'll have to take the ETS praxis for elementary education. Louise prepares for the praxis and does very well. She requests her praxis results to be sent directly to her teacher wallet, where they are transferred verifiably. Louise then goes to the state licensure system website, presents her praxis credential, and is automatically added as a licensed candidate. Next, Louise uses the list of EdPrep providers in the licensure system to identify she's attending university. Since she has not collected a verifiable endorsement from her professor, she can generate a proof request to send to her professor. Her professor scans the QR code, which verifiably submits an endorsement to both Louise's wallet and the state system. Finally, there are a few attestations Louise must submit. As she does so, the licensure specialist at the state can verify and mark them as verifiable credentials. Louise can easily put them in her teacher wallet, and her license is issued directly into her wallet. Louise is now ready to talk to HR at Ellington Elementary. When she goes in to fill out the paperwork, Mrs. Wheeler, the HR admin at the school, asks for all of Louise's credentials so she can get her set up as a teacher. Mrs. Wheeler goes to the teacher wallet site, creates a proof request for Louise's credentials. Louise scans the proof request and submits all her credentials directly and verifiably into the system. And she's ready to get to work.